Peace and blessings, community. We are so excited here at the Crown Campaign to be having a real-time conversation amplifying the Crown Act for North Carolina. And we have a very awesome and amazing powerhouse with us, history-making Black woman, Senator Natalie Murdock, that will be sharing her story with us as we take some time to understand what matters to her, as well as her educating around the Crown Act. And she will be interviewed by our North Carolina community state leader, Aisha Powell. We're so excited to have her moderating today. We're really excited about having this opportunity. If you're joining us virtually live here on October 9th, we'll be live with the town hall, Crown Act for NC, and Natalie will be with us then. We'll get to hear from Senator Murdock what her agendas are and how we can help, as well as how she's leading the work in any discrimination and getting us the protections we need here in North Carolina. So without further ado, I'll put it in the hands of Aisha.
Yes. Well, thanks again, Senator Murdock, for coming on. We know this is the busiest season for you, and we just appreciate you taking time out, but we know that this is an important policy and act that's close to your heart. So we do want to give you the opportunity to share, and we wanted to hear more about your hair story. So again, I chatted with you a little bit because it was just awesome to read more about you, and just you empower so many others as well as myself, because representation matter at each level. And visibility it matters. And so we are coming here to talk about the Crown Campaign, about hair discrimination, about intergenerational hair issues. We are here just to talk about hair. But we want to open up with, what is your hair story? When did you first become aware of your hair? And when, talk about some of those experiences that you have had during your time as senator, as a business owner, as a community leader. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you so much, Aisha, and thank you so much, Shemeka and the Crown Campaign for sponsoring this important conversation. As you mentioned, I am a state senator, the youngest Black woman actually that's currently in the General Assembly, and this is exactly why we need diversity in the General Assembly to address issues such as the Crown Act, hair discrimination, discrimination of all sorts, gender discrimination. So there's definitely some intersection with all of those issues, which is why we need a Crown Act. And my hair story has a lot of ebbs and flows, and I will share that I am still on that journey regarding my hair story. So growing up, I always embraced braids, twists, always loved locks. I don't think I could commit to locks, but I think they're gorgeous. But always would get braids primarily in the summer months, and so that I could swim. I was very active growing up, so if I was running track or swimming, braids just made it so much easier for you to go about your day to not have to straighten it. And so I remember spending those weekends, hours in the salon, getting my hair pressed. Went to an old school stylist where it was literally, flames of fire on the hot comb, so no cord, where they would take the flame and get your edges straight and everything. And but was excited by the movement. I didn't put chemicals on my hair. So I did not put any chemicals on my hair until high school. I was a cheerleader, and when I didn't have the braids in, it just became too much to manage. But as the national hair movement picked up steam and recognition, I went natural again while I was in Asheville, which is also part of my hair story. So love Asheville. It is near and dear to my heart. But being that I was in my 20s and a new young professional, I was the only Black woman in my department, one of only 2 Black women at the company and agency. But it was a great place to work. So I will start with that. But I think that being that I was 23, 24, I still felt the need to assimilate and fit in. I've always been that professional that would change things if I felt that it would be if it would assist my career. So I don't have that story where I felt forced to change, but just as a result of being in a society that has certain cultural expectations, I did not want anything to hinder my ability to advance my career. So I always felt the need to wear my hair straight. And remember, just to switch things up one summer, went with a curly look, and it was very well received. And I felt good by knowing that my coworkers didn't look at me differently or treat me differently. They did ask a lot of questions about my hair and wanted to touch it, but that did feel good. And then as a politician, my first race was in 2018, and that was a watershed year where all of these women, particularly women of color, indigenous women, were being elected at the congressional level. And so I remember how liberated I felt by seeing Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley with twists in her campaign and her ads. I have been in campaign consulting for some years before I ran as a candidate. And I thought, wow, she is campaigning with her twist. And then you have Lauren Underwood out of Illinois that rocks a short fro, sometimes a twist out. And when I met Congresswoman Lauren Underwood at a national conference in DC, she had her natural hair. And I personally told her how much I appreciated that she did not change her hair to campaign. Also want to highlight Stacey Abrams, running for governor of a southern state, did not change her hair. And so my hair story is still in progress. As you'll see, I typically wear my hair straight. I wear a lot of protective styles because my hair is natural. So I do look forward to continuing to experiment with different styles. As a new senator, I wanted to keep it pretty safe. You'll see on a lot of my campaign materials, I have short, I have straight black hair. So now I'm experimenting with different styles now that I'm elected, but look forward to continuing to, have braids and all sorts of different hairstyles on that Senate floor in the future. Mm-hmm. And what I always tell folks when we finally get that Crown Act passed in North Carolina, look forward to having that ceremonial twist out when we finally make that happen here in North Carolina.
Yes, that is so awesome. Thanks for sharing that. You hit on so many things that are kind of important in our community. It's interesting that you talked about swimming, right? Because that's the one thing that keeps us from swimming is kind of our hair. And that is very related. I remember when I took a swim class in college, I had the swim cap on and the water still got up there. I'm like, this relaxer just went down the drain. So, but that is, and I think as we embrace natural hair more and more, maybe we will have, someone that may win the Olympic gold medal in swimming, women. So you never know what these changes will have an impact in our communities. And so visibility is important. And I like that you talked about that. I like that you talked about your early experience in Asheville, as well as how your work environment, it was supportive, but sometimes feeling the need to assimilate just to feel a part of that probably organization, right? In dominant institutions. But then as a senator, you're able to now embrace the protective styles. Yes. And once this is passed and crowned, we should just have a natural fro day. I'll take these out. But braids are big fun. And I'll show my little fro. But protective styles. And I think sometimes people forget when they think about the Crown Act, they think it's just natural hair, right? Mm-hmm. They don't think about the protective styles, like weaves, wigs, braids, also dreadlocks, especially for our guys. Yeah. So the Crown Act protects all of the styles, and we want to make sure that's important. Yeah, so you hit on so many cool things that I think is going to be relatable and resonate with a lot of the women in our community.
Thank you.
Yes. So, all right. So tell us, what is your equity strategy in addressing your platform issues?
Yes. Thank you so much for that question, Aisha. And it actually came up on the Senate floor when I was in session. And so again, ran as a Black woman under 40, thinking that we really needed that representation because generationally, we have endured different struggles and different challenges in the post civil rights era and movement. Racism looks different. It's not as overt. We are currently seeing that in regards to voter suppression and intimidation. You know, we now have individuals that are making it challenging for us to even mail things. I know I've waited 7 days. One of my clients for the work that I do from outside of being a senator took me 7 days to get that check. And now we have folks that are trying to make it difficult for folks to mail in mail their balance in with the postal service. So for me, equity is all reaching. It's not simply even using the Crown Act as an example. It's not simply the Crown Act. It's how do our education policies, how can you have a very well-meaning education policy, but when you look at the statistics, children of color will be disproportionately impacted, or there was a problematic bill that came up in session this year, and through doing research with our state Department of Health and Human Services, it was evident that it would have a disproportionate impact on Black mothers. And so I brought that up on the Senate floor to say, I know for a fact that this will cause Black women to potentially lose parental rights of their children, and this needs to be addressed. So for me, I think what I look forward to doing in the equity space is examining the equity impacts regarding all of our legislation. Before we even file bills, before bills to move forward, we need to look at that impact and acknowledge that that impact is there. And at times that should cause us to maybe not even move forward with that legislation or find a way to mitigate that impact. I come from a land use planning, transportation planning background. So even taking the environment, if we know that this highway is going to have an impact on, let's say, a community of color, we have to put in a plan. How are you going to mitigate that? And I think we need to start doing that with legislation. We can't say, oh, well, we're just going to get this bill passed and figure it out later. In those initial stages of looking at that legislation, we have to examine that impact on the front end. We do have legislators that are on my side of the aisle that agree and think that that's something that we should consider. So for me, that equity lens has to be a part of everything that you do. And again, you can be very well intentioned and still create a racist policy. So we have to just be very upfront about the impact that legislation will have on communities of color.
Absolutely. You said that so well, because if we don't have that representation in those initial conversations, people can build a policy and we could look at it and say, why didn't you think of this? But they don't have that perspective. And I think that's why it's so important. Representation is important and a part of those conversations and throughout the whole policy process, to be able to, if we need to kind of craft it or rewrite it in a certain way, it's good to have those voices. And again, the different domains, the environmental, the psycho, the biological, different domains, we need to have those part of those conversations as well. So great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the Crown Act is a great example of want to highlight intersectionality as well, where you can focus on one aspect and not say, but wait a minute, this is going to have an impact on even trans women. When we look at healthcare policies, a lot of times folks think about women not knowing, wait a minute, when it comes to healthcare policy, this can impact our trans women too, and the support that they need as they're transitioning. So you could focus on, just one issue or policy and not look at, wait a minute, this will impact a lot of different sectors and a lot of individuals.
I love it. That was one of the things I wanted to amplify about what you said. It's very powerful, the intersectionality. Having the Crown Act get in place and get power protects the economic equity, our health and well-being. It protects our rights. It protects our power. So there's so much on opportunity for us to be able to bring this. It does create that legacy of protection, and it gives us an opportunity to use this as the next step towards adding on, and being very specific. And something at the national level that I've identified is that each state is very different, and the language that they put into it has been strategic, it's been intentional.
Yes.
Depending on the climate, depending on the strength of it passing and moving. All those things are taken into consideration with one's passion to want to start this. And so I'm grateful to be able to see that detailed and care about the strategy behind pushing and amplifying versions of the Crown Act. They're different per state based on what was going to manifest to give it teeth, so to speak. So thank you for amplifying.
Very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
And I know you also talked about Senator having that village of other representatives and senators across the nation.
Yes.
And having their perspective too, and that helping you and you helping them. So that village that we're creating on every level, even the grassroots things that I'm doing, how we all come together to push this for our community. So it's just great to be a part of the Crown campaign and just to see how impactful we are on the state level, local level, and now the national level, that the progress that it's making. So what can you do to support the Crown Act? We talked a little bit about this, but what else can we do to support the Crown Act? And then what can we do to support you and your efforts?
Yes. So first and foremost, thank you for reminding me of that national framework. And so I want to start by highlighting someone that a lot of you will know, Adjoa Asamoah. I got to know her just through being politically active at the national level, met her at a conference in DC. She's also my soror, a fellow member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We became fast friends and learned that she was one of the lobbyists working behind the scenes on the Crown Act at the federal level. And as a result of me getting to know her, I was invited to a national briefing about the Crown Act on Capitol Hill. And so now that we have a bill that's passed in the House, those same individuals from Cedric Richardson to Representative Marcia Fudge to now Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, we were made aware that they were all excited about this legislation, that they were working on legislation at the state level. So was just elated to see, for one, a room full of Black women and women of color in DC, literally in the Capitol. She literally had a room reserved in the Capitol of, women rocking their natural hair, DC staffers. I was inspired, braids down their entire back, like this is who I am. I'm unapologetic. I'm wearing the long braids and I'm going to work on the Hill. So was just excited about that. So had to start off with just the national energy we have, but it all comes down to voting. What if we didn't have a Representative Cedric Richardson? What if we didn't have a Representative Marcia Fudge? If we didn't have a Representative Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Maxine Waters? So I stand on all their shoulders, and just saying that where will we be without their leadership and their lead? Women working behind the scenes, such as Adjoa, she didn't have those relationships and connections to keep this on their radar, as well as nonprofit groups. As you know, Dove is also a partner. So it really, really all came together. So I think what folks can do to help is to vote. We have had just a difficult week with the loss of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who would have been all over a topic like this if it made it to the Supreme Court. She did so much for voting rights. People forget that. She did not want the Voting Rights Act to expire. Anything related to gender equity and issues. She wanted women to have the ability to work if they wanted to, and understood the importance of making sure they weren't discriminated against to where they couldn't work. And so I think the Crown Act is just kind of a natural continuation of all of that amazing work. And the reason that voting is so important is if you don't have that representation from the judicial level to the legislative level and even executive, these issues will never see the light of day. If we didn't get out and vote in 2018 and pick up those seats in the U.S. House and take the House, I can guarantee you the Crown Act would not have passed at the House level. And now at the Senate level, we all have work to do. I serve in the state Senate. We are 4 to 5 seats away from taking the Senate. We have never been so close. We have 21 senators that are on my side of the aisle. And at a minimum, if we get 4 seats, plus Yvonne Holley, who's another woman of color, this is also on her radar. She's a phenomenal champion for Black women and women of color. So when we take the Senate, I can guarantee you that I will be one of the primary sponsors on a Crown Act for here in North Carolina, because as we know, even though we've moved forward at the federal level, we still have to wait and see what's going to happen in the Senate. But happy to continue to get this on the radar. I have already talked with my colleagues in the Senate about that legislation. It would be my dream for us to suspend the rules and to have every Black woman in the Senate to sign on as a primary sponsor of this bill. That is my dream. But we have to vote. We have Deandra Salvador. She's running out of Mecklenburg County, younger than me. So that's why I keep saying I'm the youngest Black woman. I won't be able to say that much longer, but that's the point, right? Yeah. We didn't stop with Representative Maxine Waters. Now we have Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who is, you know, as they say, kicking butt and taking names, right? Some of the most progressive policy she and Ilhan Omar have been a part of. So that's what it's about. It's about building a table. It's not about keeping power off of yourself. It's about sharing that power. It's about having a village. If you all weren't doing the work that you're doing, you have to not only vote, but be an active constituent. So the work of the Crown campaign, the work of the RAGE Act, highlighting Gloria de los Santos, if we don't get those letters and emails and phone calls, it makes it difficult for us as legislators to say, this is something my constituents want, because they are taking the time to contact our office and say that they want it. So just can't stress enough how you have to vote. You all can contact your senators now. In North Carolina, that is Senator Burr and Senator Tillis, and urge them to act. And Senator Tillis, let's touch on that. We can vote him out this year. I think we should. So I fully support Cal Cunningham in his race for U.S. Senate, but particularly in the Senate, we need more diverse representation. If Senator Kamala Harris becomes vice president, we will no longer have a Black woman in the U.S. Senate. So I think we need more progressive leadership in the U.S. Senate, and just more candidates of color. A number of them are running across the nation. But this is the perfect piece of legislation to show, in the event that the Senate doesn't move it forward, we need to change the Senate. Legislation such as the Crown Act shows that we need legislation that is going to touch on issues that are current and really impact our everyday lives. And hair discrimination does impact our everyday life. As Shemeka mentioned, intersectionality, our ability to get gainful employment, how we internalize not feeling that we really belong. So I think having a law in place to show you are enough, however you show up, we will accept that. And we need legislators that get that and that understand that. So from your local elections to the national level, there is too much at stake in this election. Again, we may have a legal challenge with the Crown Act, and we want a court that will be understanding of the plight of men and women that are being discriminated against because of their race. And because of the way that they choose to style their hair. So vote, vote, vote. Tell all of your friends to vote. It is not too late for you to request an absentee ballot and to return that in by mail, but you can also vote safely, early vote. I will be going in person, voting early with a face mask and a face shield on. Do your research before you get to the polls, because the lines will be long. We can all make them shorter if we go in there being familiar with that slate, knowing who we're going to vote for while you're in line. You can also pull up your sample ballot at your local county board of elections. And also want to do another plug for the census. You do need to fill that out at the end of September. So we wanted more time to get that filled out. But in North Carolina alone, we will lose over $1 billion in funding if we do not have accurate and adequate representation with the census. So vote, fill out the census, and make sure that you elect elected officials that will really be representative of your values that you hold dear.
Oh, yes. Check, check, and check. That's exactly right. Yes, because for us, the 30th is approaching, which is the deadline for our census. So definitely, guys, get out there, ask your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors, church. Anyway, just spark up that conversation. It's popular right now, so people won't think you're crazy by bringing it up. So just have a conversation while you're in the line in the grocery store. It's easy just to talk. That's easy. That's the least you could do. It's very just for your state. It's not just for a particular demographic. It's for everyone, for us to benefit here in North Carolina. All right. So in closing, and you talked about this in our kind of really, but if you have anything else to say about this in closing, let the public know how important voting is in protecting their rights, such as the right not to be discriminated for your natural hair. And I want to follow up with one thing because we talked about this a little earlier. Visibility matters. And for us, like our grandparents, you know, my grandparents were in the 20s. Your grandparents, I know they went through the whole civil rights era. And we talked about how hair was looked at a little different in regards to assimilating versus now where we have people, representatives on every level that have embraced their natural hair. So if you could kind of answer that together just to wrap us up.
Yes. Just want to stress, first and foremost, I think what we've seen during the Crown Act is how we've had a lot of generational change. My grandmothers are no longer with me. I typically have one of my grandmothers in my frame to ceremonially show my grandmother and my ancestors still have my back. But a lot of our elders, they were raised in a time where assimilation was expected. You wouldn't even question having to say, oh, I want to, dress how I want to dress, or my hair, how I want to wear it. For them, civil rights, and rightfully so, was, equal protection under the law. We don't want segregation. We want to have the opportunity to get an education. And I think now with millennials and Gen Z, we want the freedom to be who we are. We don't want to have to conform. We don't want to have to be placed in a box. And I think the Crown Act shows us that discrimination can look very different. It may not be a literacy test. When you go to vote, it will be, let's play with the mail. It may not be, a fire hose, but it will be discrimination in housing or in education or segregated schools. So I think even though the discrimination looks very different, we still feel that, and we felt that in the workplace, which is why we have a need for the Crown Act and need to go ahead and get that passed. And again, we lean on our elders, we depend on them. But I think that's why when it comes to representation, we have to figure out what does that look like in the current time in 2020. Our approach may be different. We may take on different issues. Again, Dove is a partner, and we've seen that now. Not only do we want equity, but we want these private corporations to also step up to the plate and support these movements. So Black Lives Matter, from Nike to virtually any company that you mentioned, folks are asking, what does that diversity look like on your board of directors? Where are you providing funding in the community? We want more than just, a few scholarships here and there. We want to know, how are you truly going to integrate yourself within the community? How are you really supporting Black Lives Matter? So I think, again, activism just looks different in this time as leaders. They expect more out of us. They expect accountability. They want to know what we're doing. They want to see receipts. And I welcome that. And so in closing, just want to, again, stress the importance of voting and also how all of it is interconnected. To me, you cannot, in the summer months, if you were, marching as a result of the shooting of George Floyd, how dare you not vote? How dare you not vote? You can take that same energy that you did when you were marching this summer and go and vote. Particularly in North Carolina, we have a very long early voting period. You literally have no excuse. If you vote by absentee, you also don't need an excuse for that. It's literally called no excuse absentee voting. So whatever it is that you need to do to vote, if it is healthcare that you care about, if it's funding for HBCUs, if it's more funding for education. We have an expanded Medicaid here in North Carolina. We have literally hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians that do not have health care because my colleagues in Raleigh are playing politics with people's lives and refuse to expand Medicaid. So you name the issue, I can point you to either a local elected official or a state elected official that is directly connected to your inability to get those services. When we gain power in the Senate, again, we can work on things such as the Crown Act. We can expand Medicaid. We can fully fund public education. So whatever issue it is that you care about, it is on the ballot. And when folks think that they are protesting by not voting, no, you are not. You may not vote, but the people that vote will speak for you. If you don't show up, you are not represented. If more people that look like us with melanin in their skin voted in 2018, we would quite literally potentially have a different president. If we took that energy from North Carolina to Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, if people like us voted, we would have had a different outcome. So you can't think that your vote doesn't matter. It does. And as women, literally our ability to have control over our own bodies. You know, we're talking about the Crown Act today, but we can potentially change the Supreme Court in a manner that it will take us 10 to 15 years to see another change. So there's so much at stake. Your senators determine who your judges are. I believe about a third of our federal judicial appointments have been changed through this last 4 years. So we cannot afford another 4 years of this. And at the state level, we definitely can't afford another 4 years. A last plug, in the state, we will be, as it relates to the census, we also need folks to fill out the census. We potentially can get another congressional seat right here in North Carolina. So you filling out that census will help us to do that. The individuals that you elect will be drawing those lines, myself included. I'm on the elections committee and redistricting, but guess what? If we don't have a majority, good luck trying to have districts that are really reflective of the districts that we represent. They will continue to just pack in people of color so that their representation is diluted, and we won't have the representation we need at the state level or the federal level. So vote, 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 fill out the census. Your voice matters. We need you to speak up.
I'm just super excited to have these conversations because I'm gaining more information to share out to others, because I don't think about those things every day. I think I'm a grassroots person, but now hearing you talk about, you know, how everything is impacted through the census, through federal work, through the redistricting, all of those things, those are important. We hear it all the time, but this is an opportunity for people out in the audience that will hear this, is to see how it all works together and why representation really matters. Well, we again thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And now I'm going to turn it over to our co-founder for the Crown Campaign, Ms. Shemeka.
Thank you so much. It's certainly enlightening, exciting. I mean, you stirred up some things that we can do. We always advocate with the Crown Campaign that after you sign the petition, that doesn't have to be your only level of advocacy, but there's so many other avenues that you can go into and support. And we here at the Crown Campaign really amplify where you want to fit in. So that's anywhere, whether it's creative arts, whether it's spoken word, whether it's you're creating cartoons or writing songs or doing photography or doing research or writing policy, or building business, you know, around products. You know, we have had this opportunity to amplify this under bringing the village together and spotlighting champions like you, Senator Murdock, that are really pushing for that representation by being that change. Your story, you know, I'm sure you didn't wake up one day and said, man, I'm going to make history, but you know, your journey was intentional in honoring the pathway that was set before you, and that in and of itself is something powerful. Before we close out, just amplify how people can get in contact with you and just really follow the work that you're doing across the state.
Yeah, folks can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My handles are at Natalie, NATALIE FORNC. So again, we're on all platforms. We are very active. If you are a constituent that happens to live in Senate District 20, that is the southern half of Durham County, feel free to reach out to me at Natalie, NATALIE.Murdock, MURDOCK, at ncleg.gov. And you can also learn more about me on my website at natalie-murdock.com. Would love to connect and talk with you. Again, especially those of you that are passionate about the Crown Act. we will hit the ground running. We likely will not go back into session this year since we may not have another federal coronavirus bill. But we will hit the ground running in January, hopefully with some major changes at the state level. So we look forward to so many of the bills that we file just sit there because we aren't in power. And we will be going back, I believe, January 12th or 13th of 2021. Again, I'm on the ballot. We'll love to continue to have your support. And just can't stress enough that you cannot sit this one out, whatever you can do. As Shemeka said, you all have a space in the movement, whether it's the arts, whether it's graphics, if you have the gift for gab and want to do videos, and also want to encourage folks to use their platforms. I mean, during COVID, we are all working remotely. And again, with the Black Lives Matter movement, those were Instagram posts and Facebook posts, and somehow, some way, we just all ended up in the streets. And so I think that shows us the power of technology. I think that's going to continue. Social media activism. And if you have, 80 followers, those are 80 followers that I don't have. So I just encourage folks to use all their platforms to encourage people to vote and to encourage people to fill out the census. And just know I'm with you. And we are going to build a better North Carolina with the help of all of you watching.
Yes, I love it. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aisha, for just amplifying an incredible experience, like really making it engaging as we learned the journey and felt like we were extremely connected to Senator Murdock. And how she brought us in and activated us. So if you want more information on how to get involved here specifically in North Carolina, definitely you're free to reach us out. Follow us on our social media at Crown Campaign and then www.crowncampaign.com. If you want to write a letter to your legislators, we do have a resource on our site that you can amend and personalize to send so that you're not on this journey alone and you don't have to think of it all yourself. So we utilize and maximize resources such as Senator Murdock in the village that are leading the way on how not only the Crown Act will be very important here in North Carolina, but some other bills that she's working on that she definitely is amplifying and protecting us here in North Carolina. And we're advocating that we show up and amplify.
I can learn to understand you much better if I can get.
Is that my phone? Sorry. So we're going to end the recording now. So we'll have this in our shop. I guess that was Siri.
Siri. Siri won't let us be great.
Right.
Yeah, I was Samsung forever and I switched over. I had to.